So another way to describe this is, like a speed governor. So does everyone know what a governor is in a car? So like you could have a Ferrari with like 700 horsepower and all the technology in the world. It's capable of like anything. But if you put a governor in it, it's not going above like 60 miles an hour. It's going to stay there. And that's exactly what your standards are. So these are like real powerful things. So a little exercise is to set, what do you think your standards are right now? So, what is that panic number? What is that financial must like right now? I think I actually made a mistake here, and I think it's supposed to say I will not accept any less than. So ignore the wording. So now, your standards exercise. So the next one is, what your number should be. So I've given this a lot of thought, and if your standard is below $1 million, then I think it's too low. Like that sort of number, like these days, to make $1 million. So I'm not talking about like this year, like it's not immediate, but I think your standard should be at that level. I think if you set, money's inflating all the time, and $1 million today isn't what it was a while ago. And I think setting your standards at $100,000 is really handicaps you, because if you think about selling retainers that are $2,000 a month, that's $24,000 a year. That's like 4, like that's a very, very, very low standard. And so I think, in the business that we're in, which, we all know what that is, and I think from personal experience, I think that, your new standard should be at the very least like $1 million. I don't think you should settle for anything less than that. Did anyone write less than that? Good. Because 6 figures is like everyone's goal out there, right? Like, or maybe it's not everyone's, but it's used a lot, but it's really not enough. It's not enough to really live like a massive lifestyle. I mean, like houses these days they start at like $1 million. Well, they do in New Zealand, and that's a tiny little country. And then if you want to have a family, and you want to send them to a good school and everything, like 6 figures is not enough. Like, I think everyone should have the standard of $1 million. And they should really get used to telling themselves that. So it might be hard to believe at first, but that's what you should start telling yourself. Like,
What number are we talking about here? Is it profit or asset at the bank or revenue or 1 million when you say, are you talking about like 1 million?
So I'm talking like annual revenue. Yeah.
Sales, not profit.
Sales, we'll just call it sales. I mean, profit would be better. But we'll just call it sales because that's what I've always used in terms of numbers is sales, So how do you feel about setting that as a standard? Like if I know it's going to take a lot of work, but if you leave here, like, do you feel like that's a good base standard?
A pushback that comes back in my mind when I try to set it at $1 million is like, what if you have standards that go beyond financial? Like, what if you have a standard for working, having a certain amount of free time in your life, like being able to spend time with friends and family, like other things you might value equally with money?
Yeah. So I honestly think that, like, 7 figures is like less work than 6. Like, because all of a sudden you have other people and you're not the guy. And you know what I mean? I think that there's a whole big thing in like entrepreneurship and everything about like pretty much people create their own jobs, Like, we've got to remember how tiny $1 million is, like in the business world, right? It really is tiny. If you annual sales, 1 million is minute. So it's not like we're really setting the bar high here. I'm just saying, if your standards are more than this, don't make them 1 million. Keep them at like what they are, but no one should have any standards below that. Because this is possible, and you know, there's a lot of people out there making that, and I think at 1 million you actually have more free time, and you know, you're actually free to do more things than when you're doing 6 figures. And I don't think 6 figures is enough. Any questions?
As you set the number, do you kind of have in your mind a rough profit margin of like 50% or something like that?
So generally I'm thinking 60 or 70. Yeah.
I'm not sure whether you'll cover it later. I remember you mentioned that when you're starting out, it's better to start with website deals, and like before you move on to like retainer. Do you still feel the same, or now that knowing what you know, you feel you can start right away with retainer?
I still think you should, but like what we're talking about here with standards is like you see selling the one-off website as the gateway to the next things. You know what I mean? So when you set your standard like that, it doesn't mean that you just stop selling websites or anything like that. If you're just starting, that's still going to be how you're going to get your start. But so long as that's like your vision and that's where you intend to be. Because these numbers that people set for themselves, they really work, you know. Every time I've written on that damn goal sheet for the end of the year, I've always got it. And my only regret is not putting a bigger one. So that's why, like, you know, in knowing that, like, I want to make sure you guys don't limit it too low. Because whatever I've written on those sheets is always what's happened, you know. And I just, you know, I wish I'd written bigger things. Because even the things I thought were crazy at the time, like a Porsche or something, and I was like, oh, this will never happen. But I'll just write it down for the hell of it. You know, like, it happened, and faster than I thought. And, you know, you're like, oh my God, like this, what you write down is really powerful, and you shouldn't. That was me stretching it, and I should have stretched it way further, you know?
I just keep relating it back to monthly mail. That's a shitload of monthly mail.
Yeah, so, I mean, we'll talk about it tomorrow, like, and you'll see, if I break it down, like, you'll see how achievable it is. But on the old CFC model, like, it is a lot, yeah. Like, this was never done on the old CFC model. I pretty much maxed that thing out at 30 to 40 a month. Yeah, and that was really maxing out, like stretching the seams, you know? Yeah. So that's what we're going to talk about tomorrow. Like, there has to be a shift in the game that's being played as well, not just the belief. Yeah. So if your standards are not where you want them to be, then the answer is to take where you're at right now and associate it to like absolute pain. Because you are where you are because you're not linking enough pain to it. So the first time I set my goal at 100 grand. When I first made 100 grand, I think I took like a 3-month vacation and was just coasting. And then, you know, the business sort of got hurt a bit because I wasn't, and then I sort of dipped a little bit below, and I panicked and got back there and, you know, got it back, and I was like, I see what's happened here, so I'm going to set like a new one. And then the first time, you know, I got to 500, I coasted again, and I was just like, you know, just out partying and, you know, just, and it was, you know, it's because of this pain thing. Then as you neglect the business a little bit, or you spend less time working or moving forward, then you dips back a bit and you kick into gear again. And that's what I was talking about with you. Like, a lot of the time, like, you won't take action because the situation you're in right now just isn't painful enough. So a real good quote I read somewhere was, has your safety net become your worst enemy?
Or another one Stephen Colbert likes to say is what does the safety net become a hammock?
So like a lot of corporate guys, when they've worked up and they're on $500,000 salary with stock options, like, it's so, like, how do you leave that, you know? Like, it's become like, it's awesome. It's like the golden handcuffs, they call it.
This is my biggest challenge right
I mean, I don't have half a million stock option, but it's not like if I don't work hard enough, I won't pay the rent. It's not that situation right now. I have negative cash flow, but I worked for 14 years, so I have enough cash to kind of survive for a few months. That kind of, even though it's a pretty bad situation, you're kind of going down, down, down. Still, it's kind of a difficult mindset.
Yeah. So what you've got to do is like really link the current situation to being very bad. Like link it to pain, and then that's when you can really go to the next threshold. And you want to make sure you're consistently doing that. So yeah, this is what I told you about 100K. Then until I fell back and then kicked into gear again, and then $1 million, and then recently I purchased a boat, like a really expensive boat, and it was like a shitload of money. It was like $700,000, and then a berth costs $150, and then it burns $350 worth of gas an hour. So all of a sudden, I went into like panic. I was like, holy shit, like, what have I done? And that's probably why you saw November as like just all of a sudden there was like all of this stuff like for sale and like, launching things and like, because all of a sudden I was like, I need to get back to work, like I'm in my uncomfortable zone. And so this is not a good way to deal with being in a comfort point, but it is something, it's like an example to show you like what happens, because I'd become used to the number in my account and the number of like my monthly expenses. I know exactly what my monthly expenses are. And by the time you add insurance, the boat, upkeep and everything, and then when I took that chunk out, like I wasn't comfortable with that. And so I kicked into gear and did probably more work in November than I did in the past 4. Like, I launched a product, launched like 2 other things, did this conference thing, like sold more clients, like just insane amount of work. And that's the power of when, when you go into that sort of zone. So, quick exercise. What income levels have you, decided to coast at? So this is like, I remember it was with me, if I just landed sort of 2 10K deals a month, I'd just kind of float. So the second I hit 2, I was like just chilled out. And if I had none, I was like working hard, and then the income would spike back up, and this is the standards thing. Like this is, if you've ever coasted at a level, or if you've ever not been like motivated enough to step up to the next one, it's all to do with like standards and what standards you set for yourself. So quick exercise, just write down your coasting one and then write down your panicking one. And then the best way to do this is to like use absolute pain and then absolute pleasure to sort of set your standards. So if you think about what would be the absolute most painful thing that could happen in your life. Like if you've got a family, it's probably to do with looking after your kids or your partner, or just what is that? What is like absolute pain?
just coasting and stuff, saying, "Oh, it's going to get better," and things like that, like panic. Like you really need to freak yourself out about this stuff.
Yeah. Well, like, so for me, like, I know that I need like a lot of money to just be even remotely happy, which might not be a good way to like live life, but that's just like me, you know, and I know that's true about myself. So, like, you know, I need at the very least 1 million. I know that now. Like, just to be even to just smile, like that would be the absolute, like, you know, I need, and I'm trying to lift that number, you know. So, you know, I think more about like if I want to fully retire my family, so that's something I really want to do, and you know that's going to take a lot of money, and that, and so like, you know, I've promised them that I'm going to do that, and I've like made verbal commitments to people, and you know, like I've put myself out there now and like talked this up and said I'm going to do it. So going back on that now is like massive. It makes me feel like I've failed, you know.
So what do you mean retire your family? Like make it where they don't have to work anymore? Like...
Yeah. So both my parents still work, and my dad's like 65 and he still does building. And I've figured out a way to like retire them, and you know, look after them, and you know, just make them, you know, give them what they want. And the reason I like that is because it's really like it would bring a lot of pleasure, but I've also put myself on the line now. I have to do it. Like I have to make that much money. And
you're not going to sell the boat. You're not going to sell the boat.
Well, that's part of the plan. So the way my dad's dream's always been to run a charter business. Yeah. So, and when you run a charter business, all of a sudden the boat's tax deductible. Yeah. So, it's a way to kill like a few birds with one stone. And yeah, so it's all part of my plan, like right now, what I'm trying to do. And, you know, I've set dates with them and stuff, and because it's not so much just about giving them money and saying, like, here you go, because they'll be bored out of their brains. You know, they're going to want to do something. And so, you know, I've put myself on the line with them, and I also say things to, you know, to myself, and, you know, that put me on the line to do things. And also, like, it's quite hard to describe this, but you've got to sort of set yourself up, like, that if you don't do what you've got in your plan, then you're going to feel real bad. And it's a really good thing to do, like, provided that, you know, you're doing good things, you know what I mean? Because in this plan, if I'll be happy and I will have done a good thing for my family, you know what I mean? So it's a good thing to do it. It's a good reason to be working hard, you know? Is anyone having trouble with it? Like associating right now to...
Well, when you put your absolute pain, that brings me back to a very low standard. Like my absolute pain would be just to be able to provide just to be able to survive with my family. That they would not be able to eat and have a lodging and so on. So it's not a high standard. So then, do you make that absolute pain?
So we're going to link that to like where you're at right now.
Oh, so we're going to do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, like, if I stay earning what I'm earning like right now, that equals massive pain. You know what I mean?
Okay.
But I'm not happy with the standard right now. Like, I want to seriously lift it. It's really hard to describe. I'm trying to think of ways to make it clear.
How did you do that when you were at lower levels? I mean, so you were at 100K and you said you'd coast, you know?
Mm-hmm.
How did you associate pain with your current situation when, I mean, you know that compared to being a farmer, I mean, 100 grand a year is awesome. I mean, like, you've already arrived at a level that's pretty much top 98%. I mean, so how did you associate pain at your different points to move up from 100 to 500K? I'm not sure you said. I don't think I got that.
Sure. So, I mean, like, I felt like working every day was like ultimate pain. Like, that was pain. And I knew that if I stayed at the income level I was at right now, that I couldn't live where I wanted to live, I couldn't do what I wanted to do, and, you know, I definitely couldn't, like, have a family or anything like that. Like, and I couldn't help my family or do anything like that, you know?
Okay.
So
the first way to break through the seven-figure barrier is to say, I'm not happy unless the business can, for the most part, you know, has other people doing things that I can trust, and step away from it.
yeah, well, like, you should set your, you know, where you're at right now, you basically want to somehow convince yourself that if you stay here, then you're going to have it's going to be ultimate pain. You know what I mean?
You're gonna die.
Pardon?
You're gonna die.
Yeah, well, there might be some situations where that happens for some people. Like, what's that movie? The Pursuit of Happiness. Do you remember that one? When he was like living in the streets and stuff?
Yeah, sleeping
Yeah.
in the bathroom.
But I guess why I can't describe this so clearly is because I still haven't quite mastered it, like myself, you know? Like, this is like you said, this is like your problem, like you said, this is your problem. This is like, after you've cracked 6 figures, this is the beast. Like, this is the hard thing. And I think once you can slay this, like, you skyrocket. So this is like the next plateau, and that's why, you know, my limiting beliefs are all about this sort of stuff. Like, I need to be in investment banking or live in New York, or, you know, things like this, have an MBA, raise capital, do an IPO, you know, things like that. So the next step is to write down, like, what you consider to be absolute pleasure in all areas of your life. And then you should set some new standards, like things that you will not accept any less than in these areas. So income, you know, personal free time to spend with family or friends, or, you know, set your standards. Time's a big one, because if you set 2 standards, one income and one time, then it's real, like, it's a big thing to conquer, because you're basically saying, I want to do less and make more, which is like the ultimate goal to have, right? So you don't necessarily want to, like, say, you know, I want to double my income and work twice as hard, because it's not worth it. So I'm trying to make my standards right now $1 million a month. Like, that's what I'm trying to make mine. That's what I'm trying to say, like, in my goals and everything like that. And it sounds quite possible when you work out it's only about 500 retainer clients. But there's companies out there that have a whole lot more than that. Even in New Zealand, with 4 million people, there's 500,000 small and medium businesses, right? 500,000, you know, like that's a lot. And my country's tiny. I think America starts that many new companies a month. Like.
And when you start to hear the marketing budgets for some companies, your mind explodes.
Yeah.
Like some companies that I know of are spending, you know, $100 million every year annually on marketing, on what we do.
Well, I've run into people now that actually spend 80 to 100 grand a month on AdWords budget.
Yeah.
So, and to be honest, they're nowhere near as big as like the corporates and stuff. These are still privately owned, like 12-person businesses, you know. Like standards, you want to set them high, like not too high. Like you don't want to say like, you know, $1 billion a month or something, because that, you know, you might have problems with that. But I think that the absolute lowest should be $1 million a year, and you know, I think that's what you should set your standards here, because it's just like that thermostat. You're going to work hard. If you it'll take a while to truly convince yourself that you need $1 million a year to live. But when you start looking at the lifestyle on that one, so if you look at the house you could afford, if you look at all these different things, then you can quickly work out that that's how much you need. You know what I mean? You kind of got to detail it all. Yeah.
We're not trying to set our goals for next year, right?
No, we're trying to set our standards. So you should honestly believe that you need to make $1 million a year, like to live properly and to get happiness. You know what I mean? Sounds a bit sick, doesn't it?
What are the time standards that you recommend you setting for yourself? Like an absolute.
So that's when we'll probably move into goals. So this isn't so much goals, this is more like just standards, you know?
So like a standard, I know you said that you don't want to work as much. So like.
Oh, the time, okay,
like
okay.
How much time?
So I don't want to work any longer than 9 till 5 Monday to Friday. I think that's, I'd be not that happy if I didn't work that much, but you know, that's how much I'd want to work.
So otherwise you shouldn't have to work evenings, weekends, things
No.
like that.
And like my mentor, he wakes up, like goes for a run, like feeds the dog, and then he's there with his sons before they go to school. He walks them to school. Then he leaves at like 9:30 to go to the office, and he's there at like 4:30 when they get home from school. And he's like, he never works on weekends, and his phone's off. Yeah, and he's worth 600 million. So.
What does he do?
So investing. So he does roll-ups, which is like buying a whole bunch of companies and rolling them into one, and then selling them. And right now he's trying to do a hostile takeover of another company. Yeah, so it's a different sort of game than this. But
I had a question. So if you set your standard at, let's say, $1 million per year in sales, and your second standard is to only work 5 hours a day, should you start out working 5 hours a day and try to get to $1 million, or try to get to $1 million first then?
no, you should work hard. Like, that should be your goal. You know what I mean? Like, these things they're kind of different. Like, standards is like what you truly believe, and your goals are like what you're actually going to do. You know what I mean? Because I've never made an amount of money if I first didn't fully believe that I could take it. Like, you know what I mean? So I'd never made 100 grand until 100 grand wasn't like enough. You know what I mean? And then $1 million, like, it wasn't until I was talking about $1 million like it was nothing that like it actually came. You know what I mean? You kind of got to set that as the standard. Because when it becomes like the standard, all of a sudden it just turns into like what 100 grand used to be. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? Is it freaking anyone out? So, any questions? This one? And standards just doesn't have to be money, by the way. I know I've just been talking about money, but it's like free time, you know, like freedom, happiness, worry. Money is important, and I think you should set it at $1 million. But, you know, it's also, you've got to have it other things too.
When me and my partner first started, we both took Fridays off as a big thing for us, like Fridays and weekends. And we made it work like the first year, but the last 2 years we've been having to work like Fridays and the weekends, and it's not as fun anymore. So I can see it's a big thing for us now, is to outsource stuff and get back to the 4-day work week. You just have a lot more, time, and it's you get a lot more work done too, because you're happier, like you're refreshed by next Monday.
So working the weekends definitely isn't I'm a big believer that you should have at least one day off, because otherwise you get burnt out. So I'm really guilty of this stuff. Like, sometimes I'll work real hard and fool myself thinking that I'm like winning, and then I'll like literally crash. and I'll just have 3 days just off. Like, or I just sleep for like 17 hours or something, you know what I mean? Yeah. It's much better to just work consistently and have specific cut-off times. But I think one of the best things you can do is set cut-off times, because you do work harder. So like, for example, with November, like, I had to pay the sales tax and everything on the boat, so, which was, again, another sick number, like 20% of the boat, just to free it. So, like, I set these goals, and, it's amazing what you can do if you set a time frame. You know what I mean? And if you truly, like, the position I'd got myself in was that I'd become used to thinking that, that's my new lifestyle, that's what I want, that's what I need. And then if I didn't get that, or wasn't, and then I didn't have the same number in the bank and didn't feel comfortable, then I was in a lot of pain, right? And that kicked me into working a lot. So I guess the best breakthrough I could have is finding out how I could work as hard as I did in November without having to keep buying boats. Like, that would be, because guys like Elon Musk and stuff, right? Like you said it before, they've got so much money. So why do they keep going? They definitely have conquered this sort of stuff.
Don't buy like a $400 million yacht.
Yeah. Oh, I know it's a good problem. Any questions?
I think one of the things with Elon Musk and LeBron James and other people like that, they're obsessed with being the best. They're obsessed with a bigger goal than just money.
Yeah.
And I think that obsession is what drives them. Like, money just becomes a tool for them, like easily accessible tool.
Yeah, so definitely, like, I mean, Elon Musk wants to change the world, right?
Yeah.
And LeBron James wants to be the better basketball player than Michael Jordan. He wants to be the greatest. Like, so you're right, they do have a bigger vision. And that is actually, I'm pretty sure, our next thing. Yeah. So this is the thing I've found that this is probably the missing piece that I've had. So if I made any mistake this year, it's been vision and focus. That's probably my biggest mistake. So setting goals all the time, they have like an end date. It's like a destination, and like you work hard, you get there, and then you coast, and then you get unsatisfied again, you work again, and it's definitely not what LeBron James and them have, you know what I mean? They've got a big vision, and their focus is on something bigger than just the money. And I think that's kind of what I've missed. I've just looked at annual goals in terms of sales and revenue, or time off, or physical possessions like a car or something. And when I've set those things, I mean, it still works. You can like obtain them, but it's not like a good way to live life, because when you get it, it's not as good as you thought, and then you want something better, and then you're constantly having these problems I've been talking about. But if you set like a clear vision for like the rest of your life, like something like Steve Jobs did, or something that Elon Musk did, like I think this is like the big thing. And then focus is, like when I come into work each day, and like the biggest thing I think I'm worried about, the thing that causes the most uncertainty with me is, like, am I working towards the right vision? Because it makes me second guess whether I should do any task or anything, right? So this is what I think I've missed, and this is quite powerful. So if you have a strong enough why, you'll always find your how. So focus, especially in business, is the most crucial part of the process to creating wealth. Your ability to look beyond your current situation to your final outcome will determine whether or not you are successful. So like some of the greatest obstacles in life are not the challenges themselves, but your response to them, if you pay attention to the damaging effects of a situation rather than what you can learn from it, you are missing out on tremendous opportunity for massive growth. So like up until today, what do you think has been your vision and focus? Like, it might not even be like consulting. Consulting might have been a thing that you saw as a vehicle to get to something else, or like, what has been your vision and focus, and are you caught up in the day-to-day or concentrating on a bigger vision? So I've said that, vision is the level above goals. So I've always been a real goal-oriented person and set goals and just gone ruthlessly after them, but hit plateaus, coasted, and had this stuff, and trying to figure out how to go to the next level. And I'm sure it is vision. So your goals become benchmarks along the way, but how you see your future, how you see yourself, or how you see your family goes far beyond a goal. So like I've always thought short term, like 1, 2, 3 years. I think what I've been missing is viewing like a massive vision and getting there. So who has a vision, like a big vision? Who thinks they've got a strong one? What's your one?
I just knew since I was like, early teenager that being a business owner, and I wanted to, I didn't know what like venture capital was or private equity, but I wanted to buy businesses and improve them and buy more and like build up an empire.
Mm-hmm.
So I've always had that since I was like a teenager, and now like I'm into business, and now I'm saying okay, other guys do this, and it is a real thing. So I've always kind of had that goal, and then to own my own island by the time I was 50. So that's been since I was like 13. So.
Cool. Well, that's good. And you see consulting as like one of the steps to get you there.
Yeah, because honestly, buying the businesses, you need to know how to improve them. And so one way is obviously marketing and sales, learning how to do that, learning how to systemize a business, and then buying businesses, learning how to build them together to make like a little mini model. So.
Mm-hmm. So, I think when you keep your eye on like a compelling vision for the future, like every day is much more enjoyable, and you can get past the obstacles a lot. So one thing, like I've said, I think that's what I've been missing, and that's what's restricted me, and I think that has a lot to do with standards too. And when you keep your eye on a compelling vision, you don't coast when you hit your goals. So that's like the big thing I've talked about. And also when you do start to get a little bit more successful, like when you do make more than 6 figures or you're making 7, like opportunity starts to come like from all angles. There's this opportunity, like there's lots of deals. And one mistake I made was saying yes to too many of them, and it's really, really hurt my growth, because there's just not enough time. And why I think a vision's so powerful is it can serve as like a decision framework to either say yes or no to all the things that pop up.
Have you felt the quality of the opportunities coming your way now has improved with your sort of higher standards and your increased income as well?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like the biggest ones that come are people wanting me to come in and help them with like their digital marketing, and the price tag's gone right up, but it's not scalable. You know what I mean? It's me working, and there's only so much of that.
So they want you, not your company.
Well, a lot of people want me, right? And what I'm trying to do is now move it to like the company. And with retainers, I see it as something that can be more, moved out. Whereas before it was a lot of me. So like I used to sell in my retainers, it used to say like, like training and call me whenever you want, and you know, like it was Sam Ovens, that was like the brand, that's what I was like selling, like, and a lot of those opportunities came, and they still do, but it's, you know, there's also other things, like other startups want advice and everything, and you know, I started a shared office space this year. So like, I was like, oh, I'm going to start a shared office space. I got some spare money, I'll do that. And it was like the dumbest thing I ever did in my life. Like, because first of all, like there was a huge outlay in buying furniture and everything. I think I spent like 60 grand. Like, and then I had the admin of like showing people it and letting them in. And then like, then they would complain about shit. Like, and I couldn't scale because there's only so many desks. And then, like, and it was, when I looked at it, I was like, this is so dumb. This is like, not only have I spent lots of money, but these people are like asking for advice, like, and like, you know, knocking on my door and stuff. And it was just like a real bad decision. And I don't think I would have ever taken that opportunity if I had like a clear vision, you know. It wouldn't have fit with it. And I think it's so powerful to have a vision because you can just maintain such good focus like day to day. And if something comes your way and if it doesn't fit with it, you're just like, no. If it doesn't match, you know, the criteria of your vision, you can just say no. I know that Steve Jobs had this, you know, like he had a very clear focus. He'd just say no to everything and just focus on what he knew he had to do. And if you read that 0 to 1 book, has anyone read that? Yeah, that's an awesome book. You should write that down as one to read. It's probably the best one I've read this year. It's by Peter Thiel. And one of his philosophies is just focus. Like, and like when they had, you know, when they started Facebook, like they didn't want to hear about anything else other than just users. They didn't care about making revenue or anything, like that was their focus. So it's just like any discussion that someone came to him with about profit, making things profitable or doing this or doing that, just not talking about it. The only metric was users. And I think when you have such a clear focus like that, it just becomes really easy to go to work every day and do it because you know what to do.
So that's one of my big questions. You have Snap Inspect.
Exactly.
Info products, consulting, but how do you, and there's a lot of people here that do the SaaS and the consulting, like how do you keep that focus or how do you decide what to focus on?
Yeah, well that's been like my problem this year. So I'd like like this, the courses stuff, Snap Inspect, consulting, that shared office space, and you know it was.
The charter business.
Oh yeah, like yeah, I decided to do like lots of other things as well, not business things, but just projects, and I just felt like I couldn't do any one thing really well. Like it's still been a good year, but I haven't got to work on what I know I should be working on like for any longer than 20% because I've been distracted by other things. So next year, like some of the things I've decided to do is, well, I've already cleared out the office. Like I've just decided to pay the whole rent myself and just have it empty, like just with the staff, because I don't want that distraction, and I'm willing to lose the money to do that. Another one is I'm going to sacrifice like my salary from Snap Inspect and hire someone else to do my role there. So I'm going to have that off my plate. And the other one is I'm just going to like focus solely on the retainers thing. And that was another reason why I did all of this like in November, because I was like, you know, next year I'm going to try and just focus on, you know, this business is the only thing I want to do. So I want to, you know, go hard in November with this stuff and then focus. Yeah. Because I think if I just had my head down and was just on the retainers, like just on that consulting business, it would like explode. And I know that, but I've made so many promises to like all these different things that's why I said.
One of the things that, again, this is just kind of a general point, is you said you've done all these other things and kind of taken sidetracks and everything, is framing everything in, doing it over again, what would you do differently? And you're basically saying that you would focus solely on retainers and ignore almost all the other opportunities that come your way and just build the momentum with that.
Yep.
How would you articulate your bigger vision at this point?
So I want to build, so the thing I've written down is I want to build like the next Yellow Pages for New Zealand. So Yellow Pages used to be just the go-to place for every small and medium business, like when it comes to marketing. Like I want to have that, the new one, which is going to be digital. So that's, all of a sudden, it's something that like makes me want to get out of bed. You know what I mean? Whereas before it was like juggling all these different things and where was it going, and you know what I mean? It felt exactly the same as how it felt when I was working a full-time job and doing part-time entrepreneurship, like sitting on that fence, and like it's indecision. And I think indecision's one of the like worst feelings out. Like, which one should I do? Like it's.
At the same time, though, being a little bit scattered brought you onto some of this stuff, right? Like you started consulting on the side and you realized, didn't that happen?
Yeah.
So you started SnapInspect, but then needed cash flow, so you started consulting.
Yeah.
Which now. Then
figured out that there's more money in digital marketing than there is in property inspection software, by a long shot. Like I didn't know that at the start. I started one to support the other. Like, I make so much more in this than SnapInspect now.
That's just a counterpoint for the focus. Like losing, if you were only focused on SnapInspect, you would have never.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So it's like a mistake, but it's also like a good thing. But I just know that that's not the way to keep going, is doing this much stuff, right? And a lot of the time, like if you read entrepreneurs' books and they say what their biggest regret, it's always that they did too much and spread themselves too thin.
Do you have an exit plan for SnapInspect yet?
No, so I want to make sure it can continue to grow. I don't want to like hurt it. Again, it's like the golden handcuffs thing, Like it's a good company. It's way too good to shut down. But it's not good enough to get me what I want in life, like later on down the track. So I feel guilty working in it. You know what I mean? And that doesn't, I'm not saying that software is bad. I'm just saying that particular market and that product and at that price point and with those margins and everything, I've done the math and it doesn't stack the way this one does. Yeah. Like there is a lot of business out there for this stuff.
Both the pros and cons of focus. I think the two different approaches, like Apple versus Google. Apple does focus on a few things, does that right. Google throws a lot of things at the wall and see what sticks. Either approach is okay, but I think in terms of overall strategy, what you want to do in life, you need to have some vision. Then how you're going to implement that, you can decide either approach, that's fine. As long as that is consistent with what is your ultimate vision for your life.
So Peter Thiel speaks about it a lot in his book. So he says Google started off as a search engine, PPC. And then as soon as they got big, they thought, well, let's pick fights with everyone now. Like let's build Google Docs and pick fights with Microsoft. And
Apple, Amazon.
So they got into devices, they got into everything, right? They picked fights with everyone. While they were fighting, all of those companies had a stall in their growth. And Apple overtook them all, right? Because it was just focusing on, and Thiel says it, and if there's anyone you should listen to in this world on business, like that guy's pretty bloody smart. Like the guys that from PayPal was like Elon Musk, they've started PayPal, SpaceX, Yelp, Tesla, LinkedIn. Yeah, like more than $6 billion companies, those guys. And their philosophy is in that book, 0 to 1. And they have a massive focus. They have a massive thing about vision and focus. yeah, like down to scary stuff. Like when they were doing PayPal, the only thing they were focusing on was eBay power sellers, because they knew that that was the best segment of the market. When they did Tesla, all they cared about was green conscious celebrities who wanted a performance electric car. Like, talk about focus, right? But they knew that if they took that, the dominoes would fall and they'd own the market. Whereas Toyota does something like just creates a Prius for really no one in particular, but it's green, and you know that they're winning. And then PayPal took eBay power sellers, like they're winning. Those guys are so smart, and that book is like, it's worth.
Narrowly define the market, dominate it, then expand.
Yeah.
Dominate it, then expand it further. So I think, yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So, yeah, my biggest mistake, I'd say, vision, focus. So this is happiness, journeys, and destinations. So, you know, happiness has more to do with where you're going than where you are right now. And in fact, it's not even a result of where you're actually going, it's where you think you're going. So that's why having a vision is so important. If you don't have a vision, you're not really happy, because you don't know if you're going the right way. Like, you might be, you just don't know. But if you have a vision, like, you don't know, but you think you are, and that makes you really satisfied. So, you know, since I've done entrepreneurship, I've set lots of goals on things like destinations, right? Like income level, money in the bank, or car, or, you know, like apartment or something. And it, sure, it's good, but it's not very fulfilling, because when you get it, you're just like, yeah. And I've found, like, the thing that makes you happiest is if you're heading in like a direction, like a big vision. So all of a sudden, when I say, you know, if my goal was to make $1 million a year, or it's to create the new yellow pages for like New Zealand online, like all of a sudden I feel so much more driven. You know what I mean? So if you think you're heading in the right direction, you're happy. And if you think you're heading away from your vision of the future, you're distressed. And life's not about hitting goals or destinations. It's about having big, meaningful, long-term vision and making progress towards it, the journey. Yeah. And I gave you some personal examples. So I've definitely experienced this. I think everyone puts in their goals list like Ferrari or something like that, right? It's not, believe me, it's way cooler going to work knowing that you're making progress towards something big. Like, yeah, that's way more fun. And then, this answers your question before, I've also made these mistakes, like all of them. You can't neglect these things. So you should never let your vision or your goals or your plans, like, you know, you can't neglect these things. So you were saying, like, do I let my health go to work an extra hour? Well, I've done that this year. Like, I've probably put on like 10 kilos and gotten fat, and have stopped working out and stuff, and for the sake of making extra money, and it's not really worth it. Because, you know, these things I find are like, they're essential. If they're not in your vision, then you're not going to end up happy. So yeah, this is like my comeback from talking about making $1 million and sounding really disturbing about that. So yeah, my mentor example. So, you know, I used to set mentors like I remember my first mentor was, well, not my mentor, my person I looked up to was Gordon Gekko off the Wall Street. What a bad person to look up to, because he's like, he like went to jail and like did serious fraud and like, you know, and only cared about money. And then I figured out when I started hitting goals like making money and stuff, I was like, this isn't as great as I think. So that's when I shifted, and I was like, if I'm going to see someone as like someone who I want to be, I want them to be well-rounded. Because I've met lots of really wealthy guys, and some of them are like extremely unhappy. Yeah. So it's important to have these things, and that's why, like, you know, that's why with my current mentor, he has like my ideal lifestyle. Like, you know, he looks after his family, looks after his health, and like he's a really nice guy, and he works decent hours and stuff. So you must make sure that your vision includes these things. So like next year, my one definitely includes, you know, healthy food and exercise and things like that. I've made sure I put that in the vision, like, and I put that, it's worded in there, you know? Because if you neglect these things, it's not good. So this is the next step, just, you know, constructing the vision. What do you want to have? What do you want to be? What do you want to give? What do you want in your life? How will it feel? What will it give you? How will you celebrate? And, you know, make sure you include those things that you shouldn't neglect. So, I mean, I won't waste, well, it's not really wasting, but I won't spend too much time on this, but in order to have a really good vision, it's important to have detail, you know, like, I think really, anything I've ever got, like in my life, anything I've ever achieved, when I've had the goal, it's just not there, I really think about it, like, I can almost, you know, if it was a car, which I'm not saying is a good goal to have, but, like, I would, like, look at them, and then I'd hear the sound, like, and I'd imagine myself driving it, and like taking friends in it, and like just, you know, crazy detail. And when you really do that, you get it, like it works. So it's important for your vision. So, you know, there's elements that worked for me that, you know, we can take out and put into vision, and I think that's how I'd really like explode my growth, is if I became less like money and object oriented, and set a big long-term vision, and, you know, use a constructive imagination and all of those things to go after that big vision. Yeah.
So you'd recommend doing that from the start?
Yeah, absolutely, because it's like, now that I've done it, like, I really feel happy for next year, like, because I've looked at this year, and it's like I've made some big jumps, but like I just know that I've made a lot of mistakes, you know what I mean? So it's not like it's been bad. I haven't like gone backwards. I've actually like more than doubled, but it's like, it's not happy work. Like when you go in, I've got all these different businesses that are on my case. So when I used to get into the shared office, like someone needs a key card, like someone hasn't paid their rent. Then a company that I invested in, which was in there too, they were like, they needed help with all of this. And then Snap and Spec's got a bug, and so-and-so is happening, and then my day's gone. You know, like I didn't get any time to make a step towards what I really wanted to do. And if I had, so the reason I think I took all of that on is because I didn't have a vision. If I did have a vision, those things wouldn't have fit with it, and it would have been very clear, and I would have just said no. Yeah.
It's important to ever have more than one vision. For example, you talk about the Yellow Pages example. Obviously a very New Zealand focused vision, but then do you have a vision that's sort of a global vision for maybe 30 years down the track?
So I'm obsessed after reading Peter Thiel's book about monopolies, you know, and so like I really like them. And that's what I look at with New Zealand is monopoly. And I really like the idea of that.
Have you thought about or considered expanding into like other countries? Like, okay, let's just say 20 years from now, you're Mr. New Zealand monopoly. Would you then just say,
Oh, absolutely.
Australia looks great. I think I'm gonna go
Yeah.
How can you be a monopoly if you're doing retainers? Because then you're gonna do retainer, you're gonna do AdWords for two competitors in the same country, say 2HVAC or something like that.
So I don't mean monopoly in like the traditional sense where like one oil company like with Rockefeller's Standard Oil like owned it all. I mean more like, pardon?
Yellow Pages was a monopoly for years.
Yeah. So like,
Yeah, but you could still have, they had a model where an HVAC could, you could have 10 HVAC and they all paid for the premium ad. But here on retainers, if you manage all the AdWords while you're competing with each other.
well, we've got I think 6 plumbing companies in the same city, and it's okay, like, because with AdWords you can't serve someone impressions for every single time, like they don't have that budget anyway, like, and then with SEO and stuff, it just as long as they're all on page 1, it's like you can serve more than one person.
Do they know that?
Yeah.
And they're okay with that?
Well, when the top 3 plumbers on Google are your clients, then typically the other guys really want you to work with them. So like, it actually works quite well. Yeah.
And like SEO is kind of tough sometimes. Someone's like, I want to be number 1 for that keyword, but we try to sell them on it's a bunch of keywords. You want to be top 3, and then once you add in retargeting and like remarketing and like autoresponder, they're doing pretty good then. So you're gonna get really good results. Even if they're like top 3 or top 5 now. So, but it's like it's all the whole package together. It's not just like focusing on one. Like you gotta get them off of the one keyword, and making them one for the one result. So.
Yeah. Well, that's tomorrow's discussion. It's going to be very different. Like today's kind of like all, mindset sort of stuff. Tomorrow is going to be like facts, figures, like products, strategies like we're talking about. Yeah. So with a vision, it's really important to have the detail. I'd say like if you're going to do anything after this, I'd really recommend building out the vision. Like you should do that. Like I'm still working on my one, and I think you should constantly be working on it, making it more sharp, making it adding more detail to it, because I don't think anything else makes you happier in life than making steps towards like this massive fulfilling vision. And I've always been about goals and like always hit them, but hasn't been that fulfilling. And the problem this year was saying yes to too many things because I had no framework to say yes or no to. So yeah, if you want to do a little bit of homework, build out that